Process Optimization in the Hospital Environment, a systemic review of the literature and results, the results analysis by Eleonora Bottani and company. Eleonora Bottani is a professor in the Department of Engineering and Architecture at the University of Parma. Her research activity is mainly focused on topics related to industrial logistics, supply chain management, but more specifically, she researches intermodal transportation, development of methodologies for supplier selection, inventory management, and more recently, the use of RFID for process optimization, logistics, and supply chains. Eleonora, you have 15 minutes exactly to give your presentation and 5 minutes of Q&A.
And thank you, Stephen, for your introduction. I hope that my screen is can be seen by all of you. I've started sharing right now. My study is about process optimization in the hospital environment. The title exactly is what you said just some minutes ago. We are 3 authors of this paper. Besides me, there are my colleague Barbara Bigliardi, who is a professor too at the University of Parma, and Beatrice Franchi, who is also here in the audience, our research fellow. This study starts from the consideration that in an hospital, the correct management of surgery blocks, including operating rooms and emergency rooms, can represent up to 60% of the flow of patients and a lot of costs. In particular, overhead costs can easily arise in the case of an inefficient use of surgery blocks. We, the authors of this paper, are all involved in a study whose ultimate goal is to optimize the management of surgery blocks. And in line with this aim, one of the first steps we carried out is a review of the technical tools that can be used for improve the performance of surgery blocks, together with an overview of the key performance indicator as well that can be used for evaluating the performance reached. As Stephen said, healthcare management is not my primary field of research, but we, of course, we collaborate in this work. We collaborate in this research project with other people from the Department of Medicine and Surgery of our university. But apart from this consideration, the basic idea is that some engineering tools can be efficiently used for optimization of processes that are outside logistics or supply chain areas. In line with this consideration, the chosen methodology for evaluating the literature and identifying the best tools to be applied in the context of hospitality management was the literature review, the systematic literature review. Our preferred database is the Scopus database, and we queried this database using 2 groups of keywords. The first group included the terms mainly relating to the process optimization area, for example, optimization or process optimization, or a specific tool such as simulation is an example of possible tools, engineering tools that can be used in this context. Group 2 of keywords included the terms relating instead to the specific context, for example, hospital or healthcare. This set of queries returned a total of approximately 120 papers. We set some limitations. For example, we limited the papers, of course, to the English language, and we read all the papers to ensure that they were exactly focused on the operating room optimization. This check led to a final sample of 44 paper, which represent the sample of this review. The set of papers were first analyzed by means of descriptive analysis. You can see an example of this descriptive analysis in this table. that report the trend of publications per year. This analysis was made to highlight the trend of the literature, and in particular to highlight the increase in the number of papers published. The first paper is a pioneering study, as can be seen from the table, and dates back to the 99. So probably this was exactly one of the first examples of papers in this field. Starting instead from 2006, the scientific literature has increased, and there is a good continuity also in the studies published. Always more than 2 or 3 papers per year. Consider that 2021 was partial, of course, in the results returned, because we ran the query approximately in May or June of this year. About the papers retrieved, we also tried to classify them in terms of the specific area of the healthcare they focused on. For example, operating room turned out to be the area of the hospital which is most frequently investigated in literature, more than 70% of the sample of papers. There are some examples of studies that focus on the whole hospital structure, approximately 22% of the sample. Other examples refer to the context of clinics, which is a specific field, as well as the emergency rooms that by themselves are studied in the 2 studies only. This is in line with what I stated at the beginning of the presentation. It has that most of the costs of an hospital are actually due to the operating room management. So this is not, let's say, an unexpected result, that most of the literature focuses exactly on this field. We also categorized the approaches used by the authors, and the categorization led to this to 3, let's say, primary results. 35 studies, approximately 80% of the sample, have applied the simulation as the tool for optimizing, analyzing, and optimizing healthcare processes. Linear programming models were also found in approximately 40% of the sample. There are also examples of studies that apply exact model, for example, analytic model, only 5 studies, and the remaining studies apply either heuristic or meta-heuristic models or statistical tools for the optimization of the healthcare processes. It is also important to underline that it is typical that authors combine more than one approach. This is also typical in our studies, of course. And because, for example, an analytic model can be used, for example, originally to model a process, and then the solution, for example, can be given by a meta-heuristic model if the exact solution cannot be found. We also classified the macro themes of the studies, and we found 5 macro themes. Some studies focus on scheduling of surgical procedure in operating rooms, which means that they try to identify the best flow of patients depending on the characteristics of the surgical procedures among the various operating rooms available in an hospital. It is also possible that studies try to plan the usage of operating rooms, which means that the final objective is to make the usage of operating rooms more efficient. Similar considerations can be made for studies that evaluate the operating room performance, for example, by elaborating analytic models or simulation studies. There are also examples of studies that track patients. You mentioned previously that radio frequency identification is one of my area of research, and in fact, the tracking of patients can also be obtained by using this technology. It is demonstrated in literature. Finally, more general studies that do not target the single operating room or the single department of an hospital can be focused on simulating the whole hospital flows, which means that they are more general decision-making tools for evaluating the performance of the whole system. We also categorized the key performance indicators used by authors in these studies, and it emerged from our analysis that most of the indexes refers to time, which was somehow expected because also speaking with colleagues in the field of medicine, the usage of operating rooms is actually measured using time indexes. For example, the 3 indexes shown in this slide, the waiting time, meaning that the patient is waiting and is still not treated in the operating room, the overtime, which means that, for example, a surgical operation has lasted too long in time and extra work was required to complete it, which involved additional costs. Also, the downtime is another possible index, which means that the operating room was unproductive. So time indexes are quite frequent in the literature. There are also other indexes, for example, cost indexes, of course, are relevant, but it is also quite easy to relate cost and time, so they are not so different. And other indexes, important indexes, could be, for example, the number of cancellation, which means that a patient has not been treated and his or her surgical operation is delayed in time, needs to be rescheduled in time. For example, overbooking, which means that a patient, for example, has finished being treated in the operating room, but there is no availability of beds for the patient in another department of the hospital. So there are a good range of possible indexes. And okay, well, I've tried to be in time with my presentation, so just a couple of final considerations. As mentioned, this study was the first step in a research, one of the first steps in a research project for which I act as the principal investigator, which is carried out together with colleagues from the Department of Medicine and Surgery. And this study was especially intended to provide an overview of engineering tools that can be applied for optimizing the activity of operating rooms in a real hospital, which is the, let's say, the further step of the research, which is mentioned here. Our research activities, current research activities, are currently directed towards the development and application of engineering tools for optimizing the processes of a real healthcare facility, which is exactly a department of the hospital, of the local hospital here in Parma. The basic idea is to evaluate the current level of effectiveness and also to try to improve the performance of the operating rooms in terms of usage, number of patients that can be treated, and cost as well, okay, in this real environment. And this research was supported from a financial point of view by the University of Parma and co-funded by a local company, which is Fondazione Cari Parma. And this is all. Thank you very much for your attention.